Okay, I'm going to say something, and I need you to just hear me out before you reach through the microphone and strangle me. If you look at the numbers, just the cold, hard data, McDonald's is the best restaurant in the history of human civilization.
Please tell me you're joking. You know we have a comment section, right?
Yeah.
You are inviting chaos.
No, I'm serious. Look at the scoreboard. Locations, global reach, consistency, volume of customers served. I mean, if we're judging restaurant by the metric of feeding the most people efficiently, nobody else even comes close.
Okay.
It is the apex predator of food. By every objective metric of capitalism and distribution, the Big Mac is arguably the greatest culinary achievement of our species.
See, but you're doing the thing right there. You're conflating most sold with best. Those are two entirely different universes. You're talking about logistics. I'm talking about food.
But isn't the goal of a restaurant to sell food? I mean, if they sell the most, aren't they winning the game?
They're winning the market. It's not the same thing. That doesn't mean they're winning the art form. If a serious chef, someone who's dedicated their entire life to flavor profiles and fermentation and texture, if that person sat down, ate a Big Mac, and whispered, "This is the absolute peak of what food can be," you'd think they'd lost their mind.
Because it lacks soul? Is that it?
It's not even about soul. It lacks variance. It's not a gastronomic masterpiece. It's a masterpiece of supply chain management. It's predictable. It's cheap. It's everywhere. And those are virtues, for sure. But they aren't culinary virtues. They are industrial virtues.
And that distinction, industrial virtue versus artistic virtue, is exactly where I want to go today. Because I think we make this exact same mistake in our hobby. I think we look at the tabletop RPG market, we see the Big Mac of games, the one that dominates the shelf space, the one everyone plays, the one that's in every bookstore. And we subconsciously decide that because it is the biggest, it must therefore be the best design.
Oh, absolutely. It's the might makes right fallacy of game design.
Yeah.
100%.
Right. We look at that market dominance and we assume it proves quality. We think, well, millions of people are playing the system, so these mechanics must be the correct way to play an RPG. But what if we're just eating the Big Mac and confusing it with a steak dinner?
That is the central tension, isn't it?
Mm.
Does market dominance prove that a game is actually good at creating a memorable table experience? Or does it just prove that the game is really good at being a product? Because those are different skills. A game can be a triumph of marketing, brand recognition, and shelf stability, and be, well, just okay at the actual table.
It's so weird because we would never make this mistake with other media. We don't think the highest grossing movie of the year is necessarily the best film. We know the summer blockbuster with all the explosions isn't usually the one winning best screenplay.
Right.
But in RPGs, because it's a system we have to learn, there's this weird gravity to the big one. It feels like the default setting for reality.
It creates a sort of feedback loop. Economists call this network externalities. The value of the product increases simply because other people are using it. The big game is the one everyone knows, so it's the one everyone plays, so it's the one everyone buys, so it stays the big game. It becomes a triumph of availability, like McDonald's. Sometimes you eat it just because it's there and you know exactly what it's going to taste like.
And that's not an insult. I eat fast food. Sometimes I just want calories and I don't want to think about it, but I don't trick myself into thinking I'm at a Michelin star restaurant.
Precisely. And I think that's the trap DMs fall into.
Yeah.
We look at the dominant system and we start to think this is exactly how a game should be designed. We stop seeing the flaws or the trade-offs. We just see the standard.
Let's dig into that standard idea, because when a system gets that huge, something happens to our brains. We stop seeing the mechanics as choices the designers made. They start looking like natural laws.
That is such a huge part of this. It's the invisible assumption. When you play a game that has 80% of the market share, you stop asking, why do we roll for initiative this way? Or why do hit points work this way? It stops being one way to do it and becomes just how RPGs work.
Yeah, I've seen this with new players especially. If you try to introduce a system that doesn't have, say, a linear level progression, where you don't go from level 1 to level 20, they look at you like you're trying to drive a car with square wheels. They're like, but where is the level up? And I'm like, this game doesn't do that. You just get better at skills. And they can't compute it because the dominant system has trained them that RPG equals level up.
That's the natural law effect. Things like specific initiative systems, hit point bloat, or rigid class structures, they aren't inevitable. There are specific design choices made to facilitate a specific type of play. But because the game is everywhere, those choices feel like the physics of the hobby.
It reminds me of people arguing about what players want. You hear this all the time from publishers or even just on forums. Players want crunchy combat, or Players want character builds, and the evidence is always, look at the sales of the big game. That's what they're buying, so that must be what they want.
And it's such a dangerous logical leap.
Ugh.
I mean, on the surface, it makes sense. If millions of people buy the big game, surely it is what they want, right?
Yeah.
But I would argue that players might just want to play. They want to hang out with their friends. They want to be an elf. And they play what is available and what their friends are already playing.
So dominance tells you what spreads, not necessarily what is good.
Exactly. Dominance measures contagion. It measures network effects. If my 5 friends are playing System X, I have to buy System X to play with them. It doesn't mean I love the grappling rules in System X. It just means I want to be at the table.
That's a really crucial distinction. Think about the traits that actually lead to market dominance. Going back to our McDonald's analogy, what makes McDonald's win? Consistency, speed, predictability, cost efficiency.
Right. You can go to a McDonald's in Tokyo or in Kansas, and a fry tastes like a fry. That is a massive achievement. In RPG terms, the dominant game is usually the one that is the most standardized. It has a recognizable brand, it has organized play, it has a standardized rule set that everyone roughly understands. It's safe.
But do those traits, consistency, safety, standardization, do those lead to the best moments at the table?
Usually no. If I look back at my 30 years of gaming, the moments I remember vividly, they weren't consistent. They were moments of high tension, surprise, emotional depth, or extreme risk. Often those moments happened despite the system or in systems that were kind of jagged and weird.
That's the aha moment for me. A game can be a masterpiece of product design, easy to sell, easy to ship, easy to franchise, without being a masterpiece of experience design.
Yes, experience design is about what happens in the theater of the mind and the emotional dynamic between people. Product design is about getting a book into a store and getting a person to buy it. Sometimes those goals overlap, but often they fight each other.
Let's talk about that friction. Because product design wants to smooth everything out. It wants to sand down the rough edges so nobody gets a splinter. But sometimes the splinter is the point.
Or at least the texture is the point. If you sand wood down perfectly smooth, it feels nice, it's safe, nobody gets hurt. But you lose the grain, you lose the character. Dominant games tend to be very sanded down.
I want to broaden this a bit because I think this applies to more than just food and games. It connects to something I've been thinking about regarding the music chart phenomenon. You know when a song hits #1? It's everywhere. Reels, radio, ads, you can't escape it. Everyone is humming it. It feels culturally undeniable.
Oh, I know the feeling. It feels like the whole world has agreed. This is the song. It utilizes the mere exposure effect. We like it because we hear it, not necessarily because it's brilliant.
And then 2 weeks later, gone,
Mhm.
replaced by something else, and we never think about it again.
The top 40 charts, they don't measure artistic merit or longevity. They measure consumption right now. They measure marketing spend and algorithmic optimization.
Exactly. And often the song that replaces it isn't better. It's just new, or it's simpler, or it has a catchier hook.
And that happens in our hobby too, doesn't it? I think we see this in the RPG release cycle. We have this chart logic where we chase the new edition or the new hotness, and we assume that because it's new, it must be an evolution upward. We assume game design is like technology, that the iPhone 15 is objectively better than the iPhone 14.
But art isn't technology.
No, it isn't. Sometimes the evolution in games is just a lateral move to sell more books. It's not better play, it's just different play to refresh the commercial cycle.
I feel that. You see a new edition come out and they change how, I don't know, critical hits work, and everyone spends months debating the math. But was the old way broken, or did they just need to change it so you'd buy the new player's handbook?
It's the novelty trap. Overexposure breeds fatigue. Even if a game design is perfect, let's say you have the perfect system, if you play it every week for 10 years, you're going to get bored. You're going to crave something else. So when a new system comes along, we often think it's good just because it's fresh.
That's a scary thought, that we might be confusing boredom with bad design.
And confusing novelty with good design. We are very bad at separating our emotional state from the objective quality of the thing we are consuming.
I want to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about training, the idea that the game teaches you how to play, because I think this is where the dominance issue gets really insidious. It's not just that the game is everywhere. It's that the game creates the audience that demands it.
Games are teachers. They are pedagogical machines. Experiences train perception. If you play a game where death is rare, where you have death saves and resurrection magic is cheap, and the DM is encouraged to balance everything so you win, you learn that heroism means never dying.
And you learn that if you do die, something went wrong, the DM messed up, or the encounter was unfair.
Precisely. You internalize a definition of fairness that is specific to that system. I've seen this shift happen over the last decade regarding encounter balance. It went from being a DM tool, here's a rough gauge of difficulty, to a moral requirement.
Oh, totally. If a fight isn't perfectly balanced now, modern players often feel the game is broken. I've had players get genuinely angry if they run into a monster they can't kill at level 3.
But that is a learned behavior. That isn't a universal truth of gaming. A legal system teaches you something totally different. It teaches you that a fair fight is a stupid fight. It teaches you to run away, to negotiate, to cheat, to set traps.
Right. In an old school game, if you see a dragon at level 1, the game is teaching you. Fear is a mechanic. In a modern balanced game, if you see a dragon at level 1, the game is teaching you. This is a cutscene, or this dragon has been stat blocked down to be beatable.
Neither approach is right. That's the important part. A superhero fantasy where you always win is fun. A gritty survival horror where you probably die is also fun. But the dominant game convinces us its way is the only way. It rewrites the definition of quality to match its own features.
It's the narrative stability argument. Dominant games often treat story as something that shouldn't be disrupted by bad dice rolls. High survivability isn't just a mechanic, it's a tone. It stops being a preference and becomes humane design.
And that makes older games or indie games that rely on high lethality feel cruel or punitive to new players. They haven't been trained to appreciate that specific flavor of tension. They feel like the DM is bullying them because the dominant system taught them that the DM's job is to facilitate their victory.
This connects directly to the accessibility versus depth trade-off. We touched on this, but let's go deeper. Dominant games have to be accessible. That's how they get to be dominant. You don't get 10 million players with a game that requires a PhD to understand.
And accessibility is a virtue. I want to be clear on that. It brings people in. It lowers the barrier to entry. That is fantastic for the hobby. But accessibility is not a synonym for depth.
It's the funnel. You widen the funnel to catch more people, but to do that, you have to remove the filters.
You have to smooth the edges. Going back to the sanding metaphor,
Mm.
if you remove all the friction points, you remove the confusion, the lethality, the difficult choices. But sometimes those friction points were where the fun was hiding.
Can you give an example of a fun friction point?
Sure. Resource management. In a dominant, accessible game, you usually don't have to worry too much about torches or rations or encumbrance. It's hand-waved because it's fiddly, it's friction. But in a game designed for depth and exploration, counting your torches is the source of the tension. We have 2 torches left and we are 3 levels deep. That is pure terror. If you remove the friction of counting torches to make the game accessible, you have removed the engine of the horror.
That's a great point. The forgiveness trap. A game that is easy to learn and forgives mistakes is great for onboarding. It's great for your first 10 sessions. But does it sustain engagement for 10 years? Or does it become bland?
It becomes comfort food.
Mm.
It becomes McDonald's. You know you won't starve, but you also know you won't be surprised.
And this is where we have to admit that these truths can coexist. It is possible for a game to be dominant because it is approachable, while a niche game is beloved because it is demanding.
Yes, but we pretend the dominant one is better. We pretend the accessible one is the evolution and the demanding one is a relic.
It's the chicken and egg problem again. Do players demand these features? Safety, balance, homogeneity, or did the games teach them to demand it?
Taste forms the table. It is a loop. The game shapes the taste demands more of that game, and the game leans harder into it.
Think about things that used to be normal that now feel alien to the mainstream. Losing a character permanently, unbalanced encounters, or distinct mechanics for different actions, like how magic used to work totally differently than combat.
Right. Now, we want a unified mechanic. Roll a d20 plus a stat for everything. That's elegant. It's good design. But we've lost the feeling that magic is weird and dangerous and operates by different rules than swinging a sword.
When players encounter those old mechanics now, they don't say, oh, a different style. They say, bad design. That is the power of dominance. It rewrites the definition of quality to match itself.
It's linguistic colonization. The dominant game controls the language we use to talk about all games.
But here is the hope, the pendulum swing.
The pendulum always swings.
Because when everything is McDonald's, people start craving a weird, spicy, home-cooked meal. I'm seeing this now with the rise of the OSR and the indie narrative scene. People are burnt out on safe.
Fatigue accumulates. The very things that made a system dominant, safety, predictability, fairness, eventually make it boring. Humans crave contrast. Players rediscover older tensions, lethality, risk, weirdness, and they feel new again.
It's funny, isn't it? A game from 1981 can feel innovative to a player who has only played the modern dominant system. Wait, I have to map the dungeon myself. That's so immersive.
Everything old is new again. It's not about regression. It's about rediscovering flavors that were sanded off the menu.
So bringing this all home, why does any of this matter? Why are we ranting about burgers and music charts? For me, realize this was liberating.
It is liberating. Separating popularity from quality allows you to stop apologizing for your taste.
It stops the style wars. It stops the feeling that you are doing it wrong if you aren't playing the big game. And conversely, it stops the snobbery of thinking the big game is trash. It's just a product.
Exactly. Instead of arguing about what is better, we can just acknowledge different goals. If dominance meant quality, the best-selling book would always be the best-written book. And we know that's not true. We know that 50 Shades of Grey sold more than, I don't know, The Great Gatsby in a given year. That doesn't mean it's better. It means it hit the market right.
Sometimes the dominant experience is just convenient, and that's okay. Sometimes I want to play the game everyone else plays because it's easy to find a group. That's a valid reason.
It is, but don't let the sales charts tell you what your table should feel like. You might not realize you've been taught to want one thing until you try something else and realize you are hungry for that instead.
That's the big takeaway for me. Don't let the menu dictate your hunger.
Nicely put.
So that's where we're leaving it today. Something to chew on before your next session. Are you serving Big Macs or are you serving, I don't know, fugu blowfish?
Hopefully something that doesn't kill the players. Well, actually, maybe a little lethality is good.
Maybe a little. Hey, if you enjoyed this conversation, check out the newsletter. We've got some more thoughts on this topic written down, but for now, go play something weird.
Or play something popular. Just know why you're playing it.
Exactly. We'll talk soon.
Sounds good.